Good morning, Shortridge Blue Devils. Thank you for joining us today. You might remember our guest today because she was an awesome biology teacher at Shortridge last year. Today, Helen Shere is joining us to talk about financial literacy.
Hello, everyone, and hello, all of you Blue Devils, wherever you're listening from and watching from. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Helen Shere, and some of you may remember me as a biology and physics teacher.
Thank you for joining us today. You might remember our guest today because she was an awesome biology teacher at Shortridge last year. Today.
So that is the live event coming from somebody's screen. Is it yours, Helen?
All right, everyone can hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So today's talk is going to be about changing the world through understanding financial literacy. And this is a topic I'm really passionate about. Go ahead and change the slide. Today's talk is going to have 3 parts. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about who I am and why I do what I do now as a financial coach. Go ahead and click. I'm going to give you the inside scoop on millionaires and what we know about millionaires in America today so that we can work towards financial literacy and building our financial health and wealth. And then finally, I'm going to give you guys some tools that you can start using today to start budgeting. So a little bit of budgeting 101. All right, go ahead and click. So a little bit about my story, like where I come from and why I do what I do as a financial coach now. So I know a lot of us at Shortridge are firsts in our family, first generation American, first to go to high school, first to go to college. And I'm also a lot of firsts. And so this is something I'm really passionate about. Go ahead and click. I am a lot of firsts in my family. You can do 3 clicks. I am a first generation American. I was raised in a single parent household by my mother, who is an immigrant from the Middle East. She came over to America about a year before she had me. I'm also the first female in my family to graduate from high school. I'm also the first female in my family to not be in an arranged marriage, so that's also another first. And I was the first to go to college and to obtain a graduate degree. But along with being the first in my family to accomplish all these things, I also had to witness a lot of things firsthand that were not so pleasant. So go ahead and give us a few more clicks. So I experienced firsthand a lot of instability that comes with being a first generation American. My mom, when I was growing up, did not speak or read English, and so her job opportunities were very limited. And we were constantly moving around trying to find an affordable place to live. Eventually, you can click, we lost our home to foreclosure. My mom had bought a house. And then through some poor financial decisions and also some bad luck, she had gotten sick, we were not able to make our mortgage payments. And so the bank actually came and took our home, and we experienced homelessness for, thankfully, what was a short amount of time, but it's something that we lived through. And then finally, I also experienced firsthand my mom filing for bankruptcy at a very young age when I was in 2nd grade. And I decided when I was young that my future was going to look very different. I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to happen, but I knew that my life was going to be different, and I was going to do whatever I needed to do to make that happen. Great. You can go ahead and switch the slide. So how did I go ahead and work to change what my future would look like and what my world would look like? You can give us 3 clicks. I've studied really hard. I used to be that nerd in the front of the class, taking notes on everything the teacher would say. And then after school ended, I would go to the library because the library always had the lights on, and I would study until they closed. And then I would go home, and if the lights were on at home, I'd study some more. I actually ended up graduating high school a year early and going off to college on a scholarship. And that's where I studied biology, and my love for science grew. And for those of you who had me as a science teacher, that's kind of where that all started. And I really wish that was the end of my financial story. I wish I could say I studied hard and I went to college on scholarship, and then I like floated off into the sunset on a cloud of, you know, rainbows and sunshine. But that's not actually what happened, because even though I had a scholarship that covered my tuition for college, I didn't have any sort of funding for my room and board or for living out of state, because I went to a college out of state. And so if we can do, I think, 4 more clicks. And so what ended up happening was, after I graduated, I had about $20,000 in student loans from my cost of living. My husband, I had gotten married about a month after graduating college, had about $60,000 in student loans. And so together we had $80,000 in student loans. We also, about a year after we got married, moved out to Indiana. We bought a car, and so we had a car loan. And then what do 2 broke people need? They need a house. So we had a mortgage payment. So we were up to our eyeballs in debt. And give us, I think, 1 more click. We were also trying to support my mom. We were supporting one of our parents financially, because she was falling on hard times. And so here I was, I had kind of done all the right things. I studied really hard. I went to college on scholarship, but I was still up to, we were up to our eyeballs in debt, and we were trying to support a parent, and we were not really hitting our financial goals. And so what did we do? We did what we did best, which was studying. But this time, instead of studying textbooks, you can go ahead and give a click, we studied all of the habits of people who win with money. We studied the habits of millionaires. We read and we learned about financial literacy, and we started adopting the habits of people who are financially successful. And in doing so, we were able to pay off our debt, get financially secure, and change our family tree so that in future generations, hopefully, our family will be on a better footing. And so that's why I do what I do today. Go ahead and switch the slide. Last year, I formed a company, Shere Financial Coaching, LLC, and that's what I do with clients now, is I help them achieve their financial goals, whether that's saving for retirement, beating debt, saving for their kids' college, anything related to finances. I help them to achieve their goals. And that's why I'm speaking to you guys today at Shortridge, because I want you to have the tools that you need in order to get off on the right financial foot as you graduate high school and you enter the adult world. So without further ado, enough about me. Let's talk about millionaires. Go ahead and switch the slide. What is a millionaire? I used to think that being a millionaire meant that you made $1 million every year as an income, but that is not at all true. Go ahead and click. A millionaire is anyone who has a net worth of at least $1 million. What's a net worth, you ask? I'm glad you asked. Go ahead and click. Your net worth is essentially what you own minus what you owe. So if you are listening at home right now and you look around your room, go ahead and give a click. If you look around your room and you see that you have roughly $200 worth of items in your room between your clothes, your books, your electronics, anything that you bought and you own, but you remember, oh, I owe a friend 20 bucks that they lent me before the pandemic started. Your net worth at this very moment is going to be $200 minus that $20 that you owe the friend. So your net worth would be $180. So a millionaire is someone who has a net worth of at least $1 million. Let's go ahead and switch the slide. So we see on this next slide here, we have two people, 2 households. On the left, we have kind of a modest size house and a very modest looking car. Maybe it's a Honda Civic, I don't know. Maybe it's used, a few years old. On the right, we have a nice large house and 2 Ferraris, and I'm going to assume the person in that house, owns a Rolex and likes to flex his cash. Which person is richer? Who is the millionaire? Go ahead and give a click. Turns out the person on the left lives very frugally, meaning that they don't spend their money and they don't take on debt. And if they do take on debt, they pay it off very quickly as they can. And that person on the left has $1 million in assets, meaning between their house and their car and any investments that they have $1 million worth of assets. And so their net worth, because they don't have any debt, $1 million minus 0 is $1 million. They're a millionaire. The person on the right has a lot of really fancy stuff. If you give a click, they have $1 million worth of stuff, but they're over $1 million in debt, meaning that they took out loans. Maybe they took out a ton of student loans and a huge mortgage, and they bought too many cars, and they just spend their money kind of frivolously. So it turns out the person on the right is actually broke. They have a negative net worth. And so I want us to take away from this that when you're a millionaire, it's not what you spend and what you kind of flash other people. It's what you have and what you're able to save that makes you the millionaire. And in particular, you'll notice that second number in the equation, the O, is if you want your net worth to be high, that second number in the equation has to be very low. All right, go ahead and give a click, switch the slide. Let's talk about where millionaires come from. When I was growing up, my mom used to always say that she wished that she would win the lottery so that we could be millionaires. And I appreciate that sentiment now, but I now know from my research that that's really not where millionaires come from. Go ahead and give a click. It turns out that 8 out of 10 millionaires come from families below the middle class. So the vast majority of people who have a net worth of $1 million or more don't come from a lot of money. Go ahead and click. It's also interesting that almost 8 out of 10, so 79% of millionaires received 0 inheritance from their family, meaning that they didn't inherit $1 million. And in fact, only 3 out of 100 millionaires inherit $1 million or more. So most people, the vast majority of millionaires, are millionaires of their own making. They do not just inherit, $1 million or multi-million dollars. Go ahead and click. And what's also interesting is that a lot of millionaires don't even necessarily make as much money as you'd think. 1 in 3 millionaires never make more than $100,000 in a year. And so what can we learn from this? I think this is a really important takeaway, is that becoming financially stable is achievable. Go ahead and click. It's not easy. It takes a lot of consistency and a lot of discipline, but it's something that we can do. And it's something that really, I don't mean to sound like a Pollyanna, but with some planning and with some intentionality, it's something that we can do. And I think that that's an important thing for us to understand. All right, give a click. All right, so we know where they come from. Now let's talk about what millionaires do for a living. Give a click. So it turns out that the top 2 occupations for millionaires in America today are engineers and accountants. So very, if I may, very boring, stable jobs in science and business. Give a click. The #1 contributing factor to millionaires' net worth is investing in retirement plans. So these people who have a net worth of $1 million or more, they're not necessarily out buying tons of buildings or tons of cars or tying up their money in physical things that they're buying. What they're doing is they're saving their money in retirement plans. Give a click. And millionaires report that the top 2 contributing factors to becoming wealthy are discipline and consistency, meaning that they save every paycheck, a little bit every paycheck, and they're very disciplined about how and where they spend their money. So what's our takeaway? Millionaires very often choose stable professions and they save their money consistently. And so what I want you to do, if you take nothing else away from today's talk, is if you have a job and you make an income of any sort, if that's babysitting, if that's working a part-time in a store or something, start saving a little bit of money consistently because it's a habit that's going to serve you well in the future. Okay. Oh, and by the way, before we move on, teachers are also in the top 5 of millionaires. A lot of millionaires are either teachers or they are, or they're married to teachers. This is a fun fact I found. All right, go ahead and switch the slide. Millionaire facts, lifestyle. So how are these millionaires living? I used to think that if I had $1 million, I'd be wearing designer clothes all day, but that's not the case. Go ahead and click. So it turns out that 93% of millionaires use coupons when shopping. So it doesn't matter that they have a net worth of $1 million or more, they're still going to get 50 cents off on their ketchup when they go to the store. Click. 85% of millionaires write shopping lists before buying groceries. So what does that tell us? That tells us that these millionaires are very intentional when they spend. They make a plan before they spend their money. And the average millionaire drives a 4-year-old car, and they usually pay for it in cash. So what's our takeaway? Go ahead and click. Is that living large doesn't result in financial success. Really, if you want to be a millionaire, you're going to live modestly and spend intentionally. And let's talk about spending intentionally here for a second. How are we going to do that? Go ahead and click. We're going to do that by starting a budget. And that leads us to the last part of today's talk before our question and answer. Let's talk about budgeting. Let's switch the slide. So budgeting 101. If you've heard the term budget before, sometimes people have a negative understanding of the word budget. They think it's a bad thing. They think it means that they're broke, but actually rich people budget. That's how it is. A budget, go ahead and click, is simply a plan for how money will be spent. So if you've ever gotten $5 and thought to yourself, I have $5, I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to get a candy bar and a soda. Congrats, you've made a budget because you made a plan for your money before you spent your money. Now, there are a lot of different ways that you can budget. There are a lot of different methods people use, but this is what I teach my coaching clients. Go ahead and click. I teach a method called zero-based budgeting. Give, I think, 3 clicks. Yep. To do zero-based budgeting, you're going to estimate your income for the month, however much money you think you're going to earn for the month. Then you're going to give every dollar a home or a job for the month. You're going to assign a home for every dollar, so that at the end, your income minus your expenses equals 0. So let's take a look at an example. Go ahead and switch the slide. Let's say you have, so this is an example. Let's say that you babysit and you babysit consistently for the same family a couple of nights every month. And you know at the beginning of the month so we're in November, so December 1st, you know that you can assume you're going to make $40 for the month. Let's say you help your mom with the cell phone bill, so you're going to give her $25 because you give her that amount every month, so that's $25 right there. Let's say you also want to spend $10 on some junk food, so budget $10 for that, and then you want to save up. Let's say that there's a special something that you want to buy, new makeup palette or a video game or something that you want to buy, and it's coming out in a few months. You want to save up for it, so you decide to put aside $5. So that totals up to $40, and that's why we call it a zero-based budget, because your income minus your expenses comes out to 0. Now, you might think to yourself, well, $40 isn't that much money, so why is it important to make a budget for it? It's important that you start budgeting now when your budget is simple, so that later on, go ahead and switch the slide, when your budget is a little bit more complicated, you already have the technique down. So this is another example of, say, somebody who has a take-home pay of $2,500 a month. And you can just see down the line, we have rent and food and car items, insurance and gas. They have utilities and internet, entertainment, let's say clothing. Let's say they want to save for holiday gifts because Christmas is coming up next month. And then finally, they have their savings and their investments. And again, that all totals up to $2,500. So again, their income minus their expenses comes out to 0. And that's your budget. Okay, go ahead and switch the slide. Let's talk about some takeaways. So if I want you to take away anything from this talk, I want you to understand, go ahead and click, that financial stability is achievable. It's work. It's not something that comes really easily, or it's something that you're going to have to do intentionally, but it's something that can be done. Go ahead and click. Millionaires most often choose stable professions, so things that are always going to be in demand, like being an engineer, an accountant, a teacher, something that's very stable. Go ahead and click. Millionaires save consistently. So wherever you're at right now in your financial journey, if you already have a part-time job, that's great. Start saving a little bit of money and just socking it away, and make it a habit that you do consistently. Next, millionaires live modestly and they spend intentionally. How do they spend intentionally? Go ahead and click. They make budgets, and a budget is a plan for how money will be spent before it's spent. And give a click. And remember, very easy equation, your income minus your expenses should come out to 0. And that's how you make a zero-based budget, which is one of the kind of most straightforward ways to make a budget in my experience. All right, as a former teacher, I couldn't come and speak to you guys without giving you a little bit of homework. So go ahead and switch the slide. This is some homework for you future millionaires, and then I'll show you some resources and we'll take some questions. Number 1, go ahead and click. Start making a budget for how you spend your money. Remember, budget is just a plan for how you spend your money before you spend it. Number 2, start planning for college or trade school in order to avoid student debt as much as you can. Go ahead and click. I want you to, once you figure out what it is that you want to study, take 5 minutes and take a look at job growth and projected salaries for the field that you want to study, just so that you have a good understanding of what you can expect to make in your chosen field. Next, if you're a senior, I want you to treat applying for scholarships like it's a second job. I'll be sending your teachers some resources after this talk today to send out to you as well, with some databases for finding scholarships, and really put it in your calendar. Just take a couple of evenings a week and treat applying for scholarships like you're getting paid to do it, really. Next and last, I would say consider a gap year to work full time if it will help you avoid student debt. And something that you can do if you're a senior and you've already sent out your college applications, you can ask about a deferment. A lot of colleges will actually admit you, they'll let you in, and then they'll allow you to put off enrollment for a year. And so if you need to go work full time for a year and live at home and keep your expenses low and save up so that you can avoid student debt, that might be an option for you. All right, go ahead and click. And if you're a first generation American, first to go to high school, first to go to college, I have a special assignment for you. I want you, go ahead and click, to have an honest conversation with whoever you live with at home about their expectations and your expectations for the future. If I could go back, the one thing I would have done is sat down with my mom and had an honest conversation about how long she expected me to support her and send her money. And we didn't have that conversation, and that's something that I regret. So I want you to not make that same mistake. I want you to have an honest conversation. Do they expect you to, go to college very locally so that you can stay home and help out with the family? Do they expect you to work full time after high school? Just go ahead and get that clarity. Have that honest conversation. And then the second special assignment for you first, go ahead and click, is once you have a handle on making a budget for how you spend your money, help your family budget. This is how you're going to change the world around you. You're going to get yourself on the right financial footing, and then you're going to pay it forward by helping your family and your community get on a budget, get to the point where they know where their money is being spent so that they can be intentional about that spending. All right, go ahead and switch the slide. Just wanted to share a few resources before we take some questions. Some really great books for you to read if you're a reader are Everyday Millionaires by Chris Hogan and Debt Free Degree by Anthony O'Neill. A couple of very helpful YouTube channels are Shane Hummus. He also goes by the Success GPS. He does really great videos about college degrees and which college degrees are the best bang for your buck as far as student debt and then projected income. And then there's also a financial channel, Miss Be Helpful. She talks a lot about budgeting, getting out of debt, avoiding different money traps. And she's been through a lot of stuff like me. She really gets it. I like her a lot. And then for those of you who are ready to make your first budget today, go ahead and download the Every Dollar app. It's free. It's very user friendly. It's what I use with my clients, and it's just really helpful. All right, hit me with your questions.
Okay, our first question is, why do they pay cars in cash?
Why do they pay cars in cash? That's a great question. The reason is because it helps them to avoid having a car payment. So if you pay for a car in cash, it's just like any other purchase. Like if you buy a pair of shoes in cash, you own the shoes and then they're your shoes, right? So same idea with a car. Cars, generally speaking, are not going to go up in value. They are not going to appreciate in value. They're actually only going to go down in value as they age. And so the reason that most millionaires do pay for their cars in cash is so that they are not tied to an item that's not going to go up in value over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you explain that buying and getting a loan are not the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'll use the shoes example. So let's say you want to go buy a pair of shoes, and you go to the store and you just buy the shoes like one does. You take out your money and you buy the shoes. Now they are your shoes. They belong to you. You are responsible for them. You get to enjoy them, and kind of the purchase is done. If you hypothetically took out a loan to buy the shoes, you technically do not own those shoes until that loan is paid off. The shoe store owns the shoes, and so they're not really yours. They're you're not going to get that full benefit of owning those shoes like you would if you just owned them outright. And also, more importantly, you're tying up your income in future months. So you would have to pay the shoe store, let's say, I don't know, $10 a month, for example, to pay off your loan. And so so for the next however many months, you would owe $10, and that's $10 less that you would be able to either save or invest or spend how you see fit. You're tying up your income. Additionally, there's something called interest on a loan, which means that ultimately when you take out a loan on something, you're paying more money for that item.
How many millionaires have kids versus do not have kids?
Ooh, that is a good question. So I don't remember the statistic off the top of my head. Most of them do. I don't remember the exact statistic, but I can find it out for you. But I remember it was the majority of them did.
Can you become a millionaire by just being an animator?
By just being an animator? Ooh, that is a great question. Well, I think it's going to depend on, so the answer is I don't know. It's going to depend on what your income is and how you spend that income. I would say that if you want to become an animator, definitely take a few minutes to look at the job outlook and the projected salary for what an animator makes. Decide if that's something you would be okay with, and kind of go from there. And just keep in mind that no matter what it is you choose to do, as long as you live below your means and you save a little bit of money every month, you should be on the right track.
We have a couple good questions. How many millionaires own stocks? Will stocks help to become one?
That's a great question. So yes, the vast majority of millionaires are going to, they are going to own stocks. So what we mentioned before was that one of the biggest wealth building tools for millionaires is their retirement plans. And retirement plans are actually invested in the stock market. And so yes, they do. That being said, I'm glad that person asked that question. Most millionaires do not invest in individual stocks, meaning that they don't, for example, just go buy a bunch of stocks in one company like Google or Facebook or Tesla. What they do instead is they buy what are called mutual funds, which are essentially almost like a combo deal of stocks, and that's a little bit more secure, and it's less risk than buying single stocks. So if I recall correctly, the statistic was I think it was only 4 or 5% of millionaires actually become millionaires through buying single stocks. The rest, over 90%, when they invest in mutual funds and not single stocks.
What's the best age to start with credit for our future?
Ooh, that's a good question. In all honesty, when we talk about credit, credit cards, credit scores, that all has to do with borrowing money. Generally speaking, if you were my client, I would advise you to avoid credit as much as possible because you want to avoid borrowing money as much as possible. So I would say as late as possible, generally speaking, is your best bet. That would be my general advice.
What is the best way to build credit?
Ooh, along those same lines, so credit is built by borrowing money, and we, generally speaking, we want to avoid borrowing money as much as we can. Building credit, though, just to answer the question, you build credit by borrowing money and paying it off on time. So if you for whatever reason had to take out a credit card, paying off that credit card on time every time is going to build up your credit score. It will give you a higher credit score, which is if you're interested in credit, that's what you would want.
And one more question. Would you say that going to college can aid in becoming a millionaire? If so, what career paths would you say are most reliable for such?
Ooh, that is a fantastic question. So the first question is college helpful in becoming a millionaire? It is. Approximately 88% of millionaires in America have a bachelor's degree, so I'd be wrong to say that it doesn't help. That being said, I think in order for it to actually help you to become financially stable and financially in a good spot, the most important thing is to be intentional about what you want to do. Don't go to college and don't go to college if you don't know what you want to study. Generally speaking, very stable professions that are generally high paying, like being an engineer, being an accountant, business and science, tend to be kind of your best bets. But at the end of